You are listening to the Scars and Guitars podcast series that syndicates for the A-List Online. My name is Andrew Mackay-Smith. Thank you so much for tuning in. The interview subject coming up for you. He's in a band called Dimmu Borgir and Insidious Disease and a few others, I must add. But the reason for the conversation with Silenoz is to promote Insidious Disease's brand new album for 2020, titled After Death, and it is superb. Definitely one of my top 5 releases that I've heard so far this year. We'll talk about why throughout this episode. You can pick it up via Nuclear Blast on the 30th of October, that being this year, 2020, in case you're listening to it in the distant future. I've got some episodes posted that are about 3.5 years old at this point, so it's always good to put the year in, and that's why I do it. Anyhow, here he is, Silenoz. Hey mate, how's things?
Hey Andrew, how are you, man?
I'm good, brother. How's the how the calls going? You know, the old phone a grind indie journo thing going with us Australian media types. How are we treating you?
Good. Miss Australia.
How many calls have you had to take in this block of interviews?
It's just 3 so far today. So I'll try to keep it somewhat fresh with like 5 to 6 interviews a day.
Yeah, I know. Who was that?
To not lose my voice either, you know.
Yeah, I know. And look, I spoke to Barney from Napalm Death 2-3 nights ago, I think it was, and he was in his 8th week of doing it, and we had quite a bit of a conversation about it because you've got to do it, right? You can't tour at the moment. It's the only way you can spread the word is by talking to journalists from all sorts of publications. So you know. Has Rolling Stone America reached out to you yet? Because I love this album, by the way, but have, you know, those assholes at Rolling Stone America, have they reached out to you yet to actually have a conversation?
Not that I know
of. Well, there is one good guy there.
It might be too brutal for them, you know.
There is one good guy there. Hank Steamer is in New York, and I've had a conversation with him about our love for Morbid Angel, one of my podcast episodes, and he's a damn good guy, I must say. But the rest are fucking morons, my opinion only.
Yeah, no, I think I've done a thing with Rolling Stone before, like many years ago, like in the mid 2000s or something. So, but yeah, it's not the usual publication that was on my list.
Yeah, well, I wish that would change. But look, let's talk about this album here by Insidious Disease. And look, I've had it for a day or so, 2 days or so.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, but I did have the tracks that you released in advance. I've had them now for a couple of months, I think it's been now, that they've been out.
Yeah.
So I can't remember the name of the tracks, but brilliant stuff. I love what you're doing here as an old school metalhead. I feel like I understand where you're coming from with this. I can hear the old school, you know, the Morgoth influence. And so when you were writing the album, did you do that with, for people listening, Mark Grew, who used to be in Morgoth, he's the vocalist in the band. So did you write the material with Mark in mind?
Well, not really in that sense, although Mark is very heavily involved when it comes to like arranging the vocal patterns and phrasings, and also part of the actual songwriting, you know, because we both have a very old school way of going about it, and he obviously comes from the 80s, and that's when he grew up with metal and extreme metal. Same with me, so we understand each other really well in that sense, you know, and so obviously when we write songs, we take everything into consideration, but since we both come from the same old school way of doing things, we don't really have to analyze too much. We just butts our heads together, and then we get the other guys involved as well, you know, Shane and Tony, and to have their input on things, because they were experienced artists and players and have been around for a long time, and I feel like, you know, we have a really good team going here. So yeah, it would be stupid not to utilize everybody's expertise, you know.
I take it you all you spread across Europe as well. So how did you hammer ideas into shape? Was it one of those things where you sent out the ideas via the cloud and just asked for people's opinions?
Well, for the most part, I've done the musical ideas, and I get together with Mark to see if his head is at the right place when it comes to the musical stuff, and then we start from there with lyrical ideas and vocal arrangements and stuff, and then the other guys also, put their 2 cents in, either with arrangement changes or whatever it's going to be, so even musical stuff. So and that's how I want this band to be portrayed as well, like it's a band and not just a side project to fulfill an ego or whatever, so yeah, that's I think it's very effortless in the way that things come seemingly easy for the most part, and we just go with that. It's not like we're trying to reinvent the wheel or anything like that, so it's about just finding the right groove and build further on that, basically.
Yeah, great explanation, by the way. And look, it has been 10 years between releases, so it sounds like you had every intention of following up Shadowcast, and here it is.
Yeah, it just took too long, I mean, in 2010 when we released Shadowcast, we were on the fence, just waiting to get out there and tour it and promote it, and then things got delayed, and then I suddenly got busy with Dimmu again, with touring, and
Sure.
Shane was busy. Mark did another stint with Morgoth, and Tony was also busy on his side. So things just kind of ran out in the sand, and but we still were working on songs from 2011 up until 2016 for this album. So in that period of time, there's a lot of things that comes and goes as inspirations and stuff, and I think that really helps making the album sound varied, as varied as a extreme metal album can sound, at least from our point of view.
Yeah, I think it's fair. That was going to be my next point, actually. So you read my mind in a way. Is that I know you're from Norway.
All right.
You've given it this magnificent Swedeth, this old school clandestine type sound. And was that intentional? And who did you work with on the production side of things?
Well, the thing is that's funny you mentioned that, because when we were starting writing songs for this album, we used on a lot of the ideas just for the demo recordings. We used HM2 pedal, which is the Swedish guitar sound, heavy metal pedal, and we just used it as a writing tool, basically. And since every other new band started using that sound, I was thinking, well, we should definitely not use that for the actual album guitar sound, but it has been really helpful in terms of as a writing tool, because it just give off that really dirty necro old school vibe, and so once we came to actually recording the album guitars, obviously that's when you find out if the riffs really hold up, because you're gonna use your regular guitar sound, so to speak. So, but it did, and we recorded the guitars still very old school way. Marshall JCM 800 with the tube screamer in front, and since we're tuned down, we don't really need that much gain, and we still wanted to keep that dirty, straightforward type of sound. So we did most of the guitars at my house, my studio, and then we did most of the vocals and the drums in the rehearsal warehouse that we have. And Shane came over to Norway to do his bass in my studio. So yeah, everything went pretty smooth recording wise, and but we obviously needed help in the mixing and mastering departments, so that's why we hired Russ Russell to help salvage the whole project.
Yeah, nice to script. Did you think about working with Pete Tugtran at all?
Not really for this one. At least not as in full production, but since we did the drums on our own in that warehouse studio, looking back at it, it would be quite helpful to have someone more knowledge about the technical stuff about recording drums, because it can be quite tricky, and that's why Russ also had quite a lot of work ahead of him to fix the drums, because it was from technical point of view we hadn't recorded it good enough, if you know what I mean. So
yeah, I get it. The mics and
that
stuff,
was
the way they're. Yep.
yeah, exactly. So that was a bit of a funnel, but he managed to save it, so that was good.
Yeah, well, I mean, the proof's in the pudding, man. It sounds brilliant. I've got to hand you a massive compliment. I think it's probably the best sounding extreme metal release this year so far.
Oh wow, cool! That's awesome, man.
It made of.
That's great to hear.
Yeah, I've just been listening to it on my Apple AirPods, which aren't, they're practical, but they're not the best things to be listening to music over.
True, I got them as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean they're fantastic. I love them. I wouldn't that's not a criticism what I say when they're designed to do something, but the way that your music sounds through them, I can always tell the quality of the production and the way. But I mean, you can't polish a turd, so you've captured the sound properly to begin with.
Yeah, I think so, and we did really good, decent demos before we actually recorded everything again, and I think we had probably like 15, 16 songs altogether, but we started, producing ourselves and shaving off the fat and trimming the fat and so to speak. So it's that's what you have to do, and I think an extreme metal album shouldn't have really more than 42, 43 minutes, really, or 10 songs or whatever, because
I agree. Yeah.
It's an onslaught of audio, and you want the listener to maybe listen to it again as well. So that's just the way I come from, and that's why we had a lot of songs left over. And I don't know if some of that has seeped into the writing process of the third album yet, but there's probably some ideas there that are too cool to just scrap all together. So we might have to
revisit it when you get the chance. Yep.
Revisit, yeah.
Hey, I'll just take you back in history for a moment. So everybody listening will know that you're in Dimmu Borgir as well. And I understand that you compiled the Behind the Player series that you did for the band too. So do you still do videography? Is that still something that you enjoy pursuing?
You mean as in showing tricks?
Weren't you the videographer on that one there? Wasn't that you that produced it and put it together? Look, I could be completely wrong, but so I guess that's the question.
No, you mean Behind the Player thing?
Yes. Yeah.
No, that was done in LA with that company that did a few of those. I think they did with John Five and a couple of other people.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I get you.
I'm not sure, but it was the same company. So we basically just I think it was a day off on tour, and we were like hungover as hell, but we managed to go through it, and it was fun to actually be able to play with Gene Hoglan, and
nice,
and jam a couple of songs with him. So that was a real treat. So that's fun memories, actually, really cool.
And you did Metalocalypse as well. I think most people listening would know that. So if that opportunity came around again, I'm sure you'd jump at it.
Yeah, it all depends, with Dimmu, it can be a bit tricky in the sense that we obviously don't want to lose too much mystique, if you know what I mean, for lack of a better word. But then again, everything is out in the open these days, because of the internet and stuff. So I think every band nowadays are in the position that they need to carefully look at any opportunity that comes their way to be able to keep the band name afloat, and
for sure,
and just keep busy at it. So we take every opportunity seriously, and then we just make a decision on it.
Going back even further, one of the reasons I got into Dimmu back in the 90s is because I heard through the grapevine that you had an Australian guitarist, which I simply couldn't believe at the time because it was so unusual to hear that an Australian had travelled to far-flung Norway.
Right.
This is basically pre-internet, as you remember.
Yeah.
How did you meet Jamie? I think what was his name? He was Aston Yao or something. Aston.
Astonu. Yeah.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. That was back in '97, the beginning of '97. He was over here in Norway playing with a band called Covenant, which was the band of our bass player at the time, Lagers. And
Hellhammer too. That's right. Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, he was also with Covenant, and I think we decided that we needed a second guitarist. So initially, Nagars was going to move from bass to guitar, and then we had another bald guy back in the day that was going to fill in on bass, but that only lasted for 2 weeks. So Nagars suggested having Jamie come in and help out, at least for the tour. I remember for the Enthroned Darkness Triumphant tour in '97. And Nagars went then back to bass, and then it just happens that we were more busy than Covenant, I guess, and we were touring more. So it just happened naturally and gradually that Jamie was becoming a part of the songwriting team as well, and that's how we did the mini CD Godless Savage Garden together, and Spiritual Black Dimensions.
Great album, by the way. That's my favourite in your catalogue, actually, that album.
All right, cool. Thanks.
Old school, but was he? What happened there? Do you mind? I mean, God, feel free to tell me otherwise. But was he a pain in the ass?
No,
Is that what happened?
It was not too much drama, really. It just didn't work out the way things were progressing at the time, and Jamie is a highly skilled songwriter, guitar player, and I met him on occasion a few times after that, so there's no beef or anything. But
sweet, yeah.
So no, but it just didn't work out, and we just usually that's what happens when we change personnel. It's not because we hate each other or anything necessarily. It's more like people have totally different visions and expectations, because once you're in the band at this level, and even back then at that level, there was like a breaking point, where you had to either sacrifice everything. That means everything, including family and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Either do that or not at all. There's no in between. So I think that had a lot to do with most of the personnel changes over the years.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. Especially back in those days, mate. The kids around these days, a lot of them are Cradle fans, Dimmu fans, Enslaved and Mayhem fans and stuff. They have no idea what you guys had to go through in order to get your music out there. You basically were living off.
And still, people don't. And I think even as close as certain people in our families or more extended families, they still don't really have the grasp of what we have been able to do to do what we're supposed to do. It's like an extreme athlete. You kind of have to lock yourself up and work on whatever you're going to do. Otherwise, it's not going to have any results. And that's just the way it is. Nowadays, it's a bit easier because internet made things a lot easier, obviously, and but then again, it's the album sales in general goes down for every artist, so you have to try and make up for that with touring and shows and stuff like that, and that means even being more away from family and friends and whatnot. So it's not the easy. We haven't made it easier for ourselves, but looking back, I wouldn't change anything. I would do the same thing one more time.
Mate, I better make this my last question for you. I think you got to go to the next. Is that right? Got time for one more? Is that cool?
Yeah, I got a few more. Yeah.
Okay, sweet. Are you open to having your story written? So biography.
As a band, you mean?
No, you personally. You've done a lot. I mean, you started Nocturnal Breed and all sorts of shit. Yeah.
True. Yeah. No, absolutely. I'm totally open for that idea, and there's been a few writers already that has been contacting us, but that's more, I guess, more band related stuff, not necessarily just me as an artist. But yeah, I'm totally open for anything.
Is that Joel McIver? Has he reached out to you guys yet?
No, this was a couple of Norwegian guys actually, and, or maybe MacGyver also did that like 10, 15 years ago. But then I felt that was a bit too soon.
It's a bit too early, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you guys have been doing it. I mean, you personally have been, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're about my age. You're about 42, 43, aren't you?
Yeah, 43 now. Yeah.
And you've been doing this since you're about 15.
Yes, pretty much. I think the first time I actually held an instrument that meant something was when I was 14. Yeah, 14, the summer of '91. So that's when things started to escalate. Although I kind of knew when I was 5 or 6 years old, watching Twisted Sister in the early '80s on TV, that's what I was going to do.
Yeah.
So,
Well, why do you think you've survived and thrived when most have failed?
that's a good question, man, because it's kind of impossible to answer it from an objective point of view. But I think it's that I always, at the end of the day, believe that what I've done creatively has been working out, and that I have a belief system in that. I'm trying to make the best out of my own talents and work hard at it, because talent will only get you so far. I think hard work and
Agreed.
doing the right decisions and being in the right place at the right time has a lot more to do with it than talent.
I absolutely agree with that. That's a theme that comes up again and again and again, and also to commercial now. So you've not been stupid. You've been quite intelligent about signing. I mean, I think you guys got ripped off early on, didn't you? But I mean, that happens, right? And
Yeah, that's just
you
a
learn.
matter of time. It's not if it happens; it's when it happens and how many times it happens.
It's such
So
a shame,
that's
but
what.
it's just how it is. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a lot of energy draining, and but it's something that you have to take into consideration, because you are in a business where a lot of people are concerned about their own fortune and their own paycheck, and whatnot, and there's a lot of egos involved on both sides of the fence. So yeah.
That there is, yeah. All right, mate. I better let you go to the next one, but it's been nice to finally chat to you, and you might get something in the mail. That's all I'll say now.
Oh,
Okay,
all right,
so
awesome. I look forward to it.
you
Awesome,
never
man.
know.
Thanks a
Yeah.
lot.
All right. Well, no worries.
Awesome, Andrew.
Hopefully we can catch up again sometime, mate. No worries. Thanks very much.
For sure, mate. All right,
All right.
cool. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thanks, brother. Catch you.
All right. Cheers. Bye.
Bye. You have been listening to the Scars and Guitars podcast series. My name is Andrew Mackay-Smith. The interview subject you just heard from was Silenoz from the bands Insidious Disease and, of course, Dimmu Borgir. Thanks for listening.